The first bit of bad luck happened 5 months before, in February of 2007, when I had just landed back in Johannesburg after an overnight 10-hour flight from London. As customary, Shyla picked me up from the airport, and I had some television equipment that I wanted to drop off at the office before heading home. We drove down the R24 and then onto the M1 North in Johannesburg, which was the usual route I would take from the airport to the office. I turned off Empire Road and headed the 2 blocks towards Owl Street. It was a Saturday and traffic was light, a good sign, I thought, because it meant that I would quickly go into the office, deposit the equipment, and head straight home for some much needed rest. Now, as I turned into the street and parked the car in front of the building housing the bureau, suddenly from the rear view, I noticed a car had pulled up right behind, blocking us in. I didn't think much of it and told Shyla to stay in the car while I ran inside with the equipment. Now, as I opened the driver's side door, I felt something cold and metallic on my temple. I knew this sensation before in war-torn countries where child soldiers enjoyed intimidating foreign journalists by pointing guns to their heads. This time, it was happening in civilized Johannesburg and in broad daylight. This time, it was happening right here in front of my eyes. An armed robbery. "Give us everything you've got and no one will be hurt," said a young man who looked like he was barely in his 20s. I noticed that another young man had made his way over to Shyla's side of the car and had a gun pointed at her belly. I was enraged. Shyla was 4 months pregnant at the time and quite fragile. She tried to scream, but the gunman with the cold steel gun cocked it to her head and told her not to even dare utter a sound. 3 other youths in their 20s came out of their car and started unloading all the luggage and transferring it to their car. My pockets were turned inside out and everything taken. Passport, wallet, cell phones, office keys, house keys, everything they could take, they took. Shyla's cell phone also taken, a handbag with all her documents. Everything in our car was stolen. 2 laptop computers, a brand new Sony PD-175, at that time, a great camera, my briefcase, clothes, everything. It all happened in about 8 minutes. And the worst part? People were passing by, watching, not realizing that we were being robbed. Ironically, a car passed by as I had my hands up in the air with a gun in my head, pointed to my head, and someone from the car yelled, "Hey Jeff, how you doing?" Clearly, my stance was not enough to convince that person that I was not doing too well. As soon as they finished ransacking our bags, the youth ordered us back into the car, took the car keys from the ignition, and locked both my wife and I in and took off. For what seemed like an eternity, we just sat there dumbfounded by what had just happened. Shyla, understandably, was shaking like a leaf, and I was holding back tears as I tried to comfort her. Eventually, we let ourselves out and I ran into the building to inform the security guards who had been standing by watching the entire incident unfold. When I asked them if they had summoned help, one of them turned to me and said, matter-of-factly, "We thought those were your friends that you were greeting." I was baffled, livid, angry beyond words. "Do I usually greet my friends with both my hands in the air and a gun pointed to my head?" I yelled back with disbelief. I couldn't believe it. By the time the police arrived, the thieves were long gone and nothing was ever recovered. We had become the latest crime statistic in this crime-ridden city. Luckily, neither Shyla nor I were hurt in the incident, which was the most important part, and a quick visit to the hospital later that morning confirmed that the baby was unaffected. Unbelievable stuff. This is what my son came into, that kind of life. And even though we were shaken, even though we were completely terrified, after 12 days in the intensive care unit, Jamal Biokunange recovered fully. Today, 13 years later, he's about to become a teenager, bubbling boy who loves the thing that teenage boys love: football, PlayStation, Fortnite, you name it, he loves it. And we can only thank God for what I call the miracle of miracles. I know many of you have tried to conceive. Many of you have tried to have children and have not been able to, and have probably passed that stage or have reached a stage where you say, you know what, we don't care anymore. But always remember, there is hope. We waited nearly 10 years to have that one child. And I tell you, he is no doubt the joy in our lives. I thank God that I have a son that I can call my own, because I never got to know my father.